Welcome everybody to today's QuickBooks Enterprise Deep Dive webinar. My name is Dina, and today we're going to talk about sales tax in QuickBooks Enterprise. So our agenda for today, we're going to talk about setting up our sales tax in QuickBooks Enterprise. We're going to talk about how we charge sales tax on our transactions, how we track, report, and file our sales tax, and then how we pay our sales tax within QuickBooks. Hopefully we'll have a little bit of time at the end for some Q&A. So let's get started. Let me open up my QuickBooks. Now I do just have a sample file open, so if the data doesn't make sense, it's just a sample file. The first thing that we need to do when we need to turn on sales tax in QuickBooks Enterprise is we're going to go up to Edit and then Preferences. We're going to click on Sales Tax here on the left, and then we're going to choose the Company Preferences tab here at the top. Now mine is already enabled, but yours may not be. So if it doesn't say yes, we want to make sure that that says yes. That's how we turn on sales tax. If you are turning it on for the first time, you will have to add a sales tax item before you go any further. It won't let you finish, close out of the window, do anything else until you set up at least one sales tax item. Okay. And then you would choose your most common sales tax item here. Okay, whichever one is most common. I know a lot of companies don't have a single one that's most common. Just pick one. That's what's going to be the default when you set up a new customer. So pick whatever you think that should be. Sales tax codes, right? We do have some different language here. We have sales tax items. We have sales tax codes. This is simply taxable or non-taxable items. You'll set when you owe sales tax. The vast majority of companies are going to do an accrual basis, right? You owe the sales tax as soon as you invoice it to your customer. And then when you pay sales tax, this is going to vary based on your state and is also going to vary based on the volume of sales that you do in that state, right? Sometimes you get lucky and you only have to pay annual sales tax, and that's super awesome. Sometimes you got to pay it monthly, okay? When we have everything set here, we're going to say okay. All right. And so now we need to set up more sales tax items, right? In that preferences window, you probably just set up that first one to get you started. So our sales tax items live on our items list. So we're going to go there. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we can see we have several already in my sample file here, but I'm going to walk through the setup of an individual and then also a sales tax group, okay? So when we need to create a new sales tax item, we click on our little drop down here. We're going to say new. And then we're going to choose sales tax item as our item type. Okay, we're going to give this sales tax a name. So I'm going to call this Texas sales tax because that's where I am. So we're going to call it that. And this will be for the city only. Okay, so this rate for our city is 6.75%. And we're going to pay that to probably the Texas comptroller. Okay, I'm going to set that up really quickly here. Okay, you would probably want to add some additional information. For the sake of today's demonstration, I'm going to skip that piece. And then we're good, right? We can say okay. So now we have our new sales tax item. I do have some clients who have a very large quantity of sales tax items. That's not uncommon, especially if you have multi-state nexus, right? If you're filing in multiple states, or if you're in a state where you have to have city and county and state sales tax, okay? So it's not uncommon to have quite a few of these. Now, what do we do when we need to collect sales tax for both the city and the county, as is the case where I live? You would set up those individual tax rates as individual sales tax items, okay? So my city tax rate is that 6.75. My county sales tax rate is 1.5%, and so that makes a combined total sales tax for me of 8.25%, okay? So how do we make sure that when we're selling to somebody who has that sales tax, that combined rate, how do we make sure that that rate is what's charged? That's where our sales tax groups come in, okay? So if we create a new item, and instead of choosing sales tax item, we choose sales tax group, okay? We're going to give it a group name, right? So we're going to call this Texas Group Sales Tax. You can call it whatever you want, okay? And then you're going to choose which tax items belong to this group. Okay, so for me, that would be my city sales tax and then also my county sales tax, which I don't currently have set up. So I'm just going to choose this one just for today. Okay, I realize that's a very high sales tax percent, but that's what we're going to go with today. Okay, so once we have all of these set up, we have to move into how we charge the sales tax. Okay, so our items, if we look at our inventory items, we have this tax code here on the sales side. And this inventory part here is marked as taxable. These are those sales tax codes, right? Taxable sales, non-taxable labor, non-taxable sales. Those are the ones that are set up here. Those are going to be set up in that preferences window that we first looked at. And then the other thing that we need to do is we need to make sure that our customers are set up correctly with sales tax. So on our customers, okay, if we open up Adam's Candy Shop here, we'll see these tabs along the side. We have a whole tab here for sales tax settings, okay? And this is where we tell QuickBooks, this customer is or is not subject to sales tax. In this case, this one is subject to sales tax. And then we also get to tell QuickBooks which sales tax item should it use when we sell to this customer. This one is defaulting to San Thomas County, and that's fine by me. And then if we do have a customer who is exempt from sales tax because they are a reseller, we want to make sure that we have their resale number, because if the state comes back after we filed our sales tax and says, why didn't you collect sales tax for this particular customer? We want to make sure we've got our ducks in a row. You could also set up a separate sales tax code for exempt organizations. Nonprofits, for example, are generally exempt from sales tax. So if you wanted to set up a code specifically for them, you can absolutely do that. Again, you're going to want to make sure that you have all of the documentation on file. You can actually attach that here to the customer if we wanted to. Okay. There's our little attachment here. So if they're exempt and you have all the forms and you don't want to lose them, attach them to that customer so that if it comes back and they're asking why you didn't collect sales tax for that, here's why. They're exempt and we have all the proper documentation for that. Okay, so we've set up our customers, we've set up our tax items, we've set up our items themselves. I do want to show you really quickly, right? So if we look at a service type item, this is coded as non-taxable, okay? And the items and services that are subject to sales tax are going to vary based on your state, your city, your county, et cetera. I'd recommend confirming with your state what items should or should not be subject to sales tax so that you are aware going in. Some labor does have to be taxed, right? Some labor you're going to charge sales tax on, some labor you won't. It's going to depend. So make sure you check that out. So in QuickBooks, how do we collect or charge, rather, the sales tax to our customers? Okay, we do that on our sales transactions, whether that's an invoice or a sales receipt. It's going to work the same way. So I'm going to go in and I'm going to create an invoice here. And you'll notice our tax drop down here is blank because we haven't selected a customer. So if we select, I'm going to choose, let's go with DJ's, okay? So once we select DJ's computers, right, we now see that they are defaulting to this San Thomas County sales tax, okay? And if that's the right one to sell to this customer, perfect. If for some reason you're selling to this customer, but maybe they've moved or they've opened a second location and you need to change where they're charged sales tax, you can change this in the drop down here. Okay, at that point, it may be useful to set up separate sub-customers or jobs within QuickBooks to help you track that, but it's not necessary to do it that way. Maybe it's a temporary location that they move to as well. So if you needed to change this, you can, okay? Set a different sales tax rate. We'll put in our items. I'm gonna get some pop-ups here about lot numbers again because this is my sample file. Okay, let's do 5 and 5, okay? And that's a pretty small invoice here. So let's make this 50, just so we have a little bit of a bigger number to go with. Okay, So we can see our sales tax is calculating here for us. We can see over here that these items are subject to tax. They're both marked as taxable. And it's going to calculate that for us down here. Okay, it's going to give us that total. If we took any payments in advance, that would show there. Now, way down here at the bottom is our customer tax code. So if for some reason that I'm not aware of, for this particular sale, they're not taxable, right? You can make that change here as well. Generally, I haven't seen that too much. I don't know that I've seen that at all where we need to for one sale, not tax the customer, but who knows, it might happen. So you do have that option, okay? Now, when I save this invoice, okay, this is the pop-up I'm gonna get. Remember I changed that sales tax item here? So this is telling us that, hey, you've changed the sales tax item for this invoice. Do you want to make it permanent going forward? So in all of your future transactions, do you want it to be San Domingo instead of San Thomas County? Now, in the case that that customer has moved, and this would be their new permanent sales tax code or sales tax item that we charge, you would say yes. If it's not, then you just say no. So I'm going to say no for today, okay? And then my sale has been recorded, okay? Sales receipt works exactly the same way, and the only difference between an invoice and a sales receipt is that you're bypassing the accounts receivable. You're saying, I sold this and I collected the money all at the same time, but the sales tax works the same way, okay? So let's say that a month has gone by and we've been charging sales tax, we've been collecting sales tax, and now we need to figure out what we owe to the state. We need to report on it, we need to file it, etc. Okay. Now from the home screen, we have this handy dandy manage sales tax icon. Okay. That takes us to our manage sales tax screen. You can also get here from vendors, sales tax, manage sales tax. Same window, just different way to get there. If we needed to modify any of our preferences, maybe we've expanded into another area, another location that we need to add a different sales tax rate or group rate for. We can do that from here as well. And then the two reports that you are going to use, probably the most common report that you're going to use is going to be this sales tax liability, okay? This pop-up here is just telling me that some items have a 0 rate on them on my sales tax, and it's telling me that could cause problems. We'll talk about potential issues later. So this is going to default to last month, okay? And it, of course, sample file, it thinks it's November of 2026 already, well, December now. But what this tells us is that based on the sales tax items that we have, here's how much total sales we have. Here's how much of that was non-taxable, whether it was sold to a reseller, to a tax-exempt organization, whatever the case was. And then here's what our taxable sales was, okay? Now QuickBooks is going to do the math for us here, and it says, okay, our taxable sales multiplied by our tax rate is going to equal, here's the tax that we collected, okay? And then you'll see this sales tax payable as of November 30th, right, as of the end of last month. Okay, now this is a cumulative number. Okay, so this tax collected this period for November is this $631.85. Okay, that's what we owe specific to the month that we're reporting on. This number here, this $2,000.78, this is a cumulative number. So if we didn't file or didn't tell QuickBooks that we filed and paid for October or September or August, those numbers are going to keep growing. Okay. And so that's one of the reasons when we go to pay our sales tax, why we're going to do it the way that we do it, okay? So you log into your state's website, you put in your total sales, your total non-taxable, those numbers should all match up to what you're reporting on the website. They should all match to what's in here, okay? And then this tax collected should be a pretty close match, right? Sometimes there's rounding issues. You might be off by a couple of pennies, right? Depending on the volume of sales, it could be a few dollars, but we don't want anything that's vastly different here, okay? Now, how do we tell QuickBooks that we paid it, right? We went through the website, we submitted our payment, we're done. In QuickBooks, okay, if we go back to our Manage Sales Tax screen, you have this Pay Sales Tax button, okay? If we go to Vendors and Sales Tax, we also have Pay Sales Tax here. It is very, very important that when you are paying your sales tax that you use the Pay Sales Tax module. If you take nothing else from today's webinar, please take this. If you decide not to use this Pay Sales Tax, or if you didn't know it was a thing and you haven't done it in the past, right? And you go to write a check and you decide, I'm going to write that check out to the Texas Comptroller. I know what I owe, and I'm going to pop my sales tax payable in here. You're going to get a pop-up here. And this is going to tell you, looks like you're trying to pay sales tax. This isn't going to change that sales tax payable number on your sales tax liability report, okay? Now, this will decrease your liability on the balance sheet, what you see on your balance sheet, but when you go into sales tax, okay, I'm gonna say okay here, when we go into the sales tax liability, it isn't going to reduce this at all. So this is just gonna keep growing if you pay it via a check. So don't do that. We don't wanna pay it via a check, okay? We wanna pay it via pay sales tax. Okay, and then we get this window. I really wish that we can make this window bigger, but we cannot, and that's okay. Now, whatever account you paid this out of, whatever date you paid it out of, and whatever sales tax date you paid through, right? So if we're paying through November, that's the date we want here. If we printed a check and we physically mailed it or took it by the local office, right, you can put that check number here. If you paid online, right, you might say e-check and put the date. Oops, okay? You can use that however you like. And then you're going to mark which ones did I pay. Now, if you have several different sales tax items and you pay several different sales tax entities, you might have to do this a few times, okay? So you check off the ones that all go to the same vendor, right? So my State Board of Equalization here, they're all the same. And it's telling me that my total is this $1,554.68. That's different than that 600-ish total that we saw, right, on our sales tax liability, and that's because we haven't recorded some of those previous months, so it's just been accumulating. So from here, if your sales tax matches, if this number matches what your website is telling you, then that's what you pay. If it doesn't, you may need to adjust the individual amounts here, right, because again, maybe you've already paid the sales tax for the month previous, but you didn't tell QuickBooks about it, so QuickBooks is just doing its math wrong because it doesn't know. So you might have to adjust those. Now, what about when we get those timely filing discounts, right? Here in Texas, we get like 50 cents if we file on time, okay? Other states get a little bit more, just kind of depends. But if we get a timely filing discount, or if we are paying late and we have a fee or a penalty, okay, then this number isn't going to match what we're paying to that agency. So we're going to adjust our sales tax, and we can do that here. Again, adjustment date, right? Now, this is for taxes collected and paid in November. So I would recommend that if we haven't closed out November, we date that November 30th, okay? Now, if we've closed out November, mark it December 1st, okay? Make an entry number if you need a class, if you're using those, your sales tax vendor, and then your adjustment account. A lot of people get tripped up on this because they just don't know what it should be, okay? So what we are telling QuickBooks is that we are either increasing our sales tax or reducing our sales tax. So that's going to go to that sales tax payable account. What's the other account there, right? Is it other expense? Is it taxes and fees, right? So if we are getting a timely filing discount, okay, you could put that to bank fees, right? Because it's going to reduce the expense for your bank fees, okay? If you are paying a penalty, right, maybe you want to have a separate expense account for fines and penalties. Okay, a lot of people do it that way so they can track how often have we been paying late, what can we do to make that not be a pattern, okay? So this should be either an expense account if it's a fee or a penalty. It can be an income account. Some people will set up a vendor discounts taken income account, right? It works the same way as reducing your expense on your profit and loss. So either one is fine. Okay. If you have questions about how you should do that for your business, let us know. We can help. So let's say that we got a timely filing discount, and let's say that we got $12. I'll be generous. Okay. at least for the state of Texas. And you can make an adjustment here, right? So this would be timely filing discount and whatever other notes that you want, okay? Oh, and I forgot to choose an account. My apologies. I'm going to put this to make service charges, okay? And we'll say okay, okay? One moment. Okay, so this is just telling you that the amount paid to each vendor, so this column here, has been reset because we changed what was due, okay? So we'll go back in, we'll select the ones that we're going to pay. And now you'll see we have this one here, right? Amount due -12. We want to select that as well. So now this 1542 should match what's on our state website where we're paying that sales tax. That should be the amount that we actually paid. Again, if it isn't, adjust the individual sales tax items, okay? If you need to print your check, you can mark that check to be printed down here in the corner. Otherwise, we say okay. Okay, now we've paid that sales tax, and you'll notice our sales tax liability here says refresh needed. So we're going to come over here, we're going to refresh it. And this has now been reduced, okay? And because we dated that adjustment November 30th, that's why that's there. You'll notice that this didn't decrease but for that $12. That's because the payment that we made is dated December 15th. So there's just a timing difference there, okay? So we've set up our sales tax items. We've talked about how we set up those groups where we have combined rates. We've set up our items to be taxable or non-taxable. We've set up our customers to have the right sales tax code or sales tax item attached to them so that we charge them the right rate. And we've looked at sales tax reporting, sales tax filing, and how we pay that sales tax within QuickBooks, okay? So let's talk about some of the things that might go wrong. If we don't set up our tax items, if we don't assign those to the customers correctly, then we're going to be collecting the wrong sales tax, right? So remember when we went to set up the sales tax, we chose a default item. So anytime you create a new customer, it's going to default to that item unless you change it. So that's part of the workflow that you need to make sure is in place is when you set up a new customer, you have to go in and choose which sales tax item they are subject to, okay? If you don't, and this customer, for example, might live in Texas, but you've let it default to San Thomas County in California, you're collecting the wrong sales tax. And Texas might take note that you're making sales in the state and you're not collecting or remitting any sales tax. So we want to make sure that this is set up to be the correct sales tax item. Another thing that tends to be kind of a sticking point, right, is getting those sales tax items set up correctly. Sales tax isn't always straightforward. It isn't always just I pay this city and this county or the city, county, and state. Sometimes there are complexities, okay? And so getting those set up correctly is really, really pivotal to make sure that we have the right sales tax, okay? If we don't set up our tax agency correctly, okay, we aren't paying it to the proper agency within QuickBooks. If we're using that right check functionality rather than using the pay sales tax module, okay, that's going to cause issues. And then in general, right, just not keeping up with it, right? Sales tax is one of those things that can get away from you really quickly. I used to file sales tax for 23 different states, and it was almost a full-time job to file sales tax on a monthly basis for 23 states. So it can get away from you really quickly if you don't stay on top of it. But that's kind of it for sales tax. If you have any questions, feel free to pop them here in our webinar chat. Otherwise, you can always reach out to us if you are looking in your QuickBooks file and you are seeing that your sales tax liability looks very, very odd, or something looks very wrong, right? You need some help getting it set up or getting it cleaned up a little bit. Let us know. We can help. Okay. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to pop them into the questions box here if we have any of those. All right, looks like we have a couple of questions in here. If my option is currently set to pay by what is collected instead of sales, what issues will I have when I switch it? Pay by what is collected as in like on a cash basis. I think that's what you're saying. If not, let me know. But if you are using a cash basis reporting, okay, what that means is you don't owe it to the state until you've collected those dollars from your customer. Okay, I think that's what you're asking here. That just changes how this report looks. Okay, this report will then become a cash basis report. It will say, here's the total sales that were collected in this particular time period. Here's what was non-taxable, here's what was taxable, and here's what was collected. Okay, if you are changing that, first I check with your state and make sure that that's how your state wants you to be filing it, cash or accrual basis. Like I said, most of the time it's going to be accrual basis. Sometimes it's a little different, so check with your state, make sure that that's a change that you can make. And then when you switch it, if you're switching it from cash to accrual, right, this will list then your total sales for that month, whether you've collected them or not. Okay. I don't know that I would foresee any issues except some timing things, right? We may want to, when we make that change, not only run this past month, but also run the previous month, okay? Just to make sure. You may have some crossover between what has already been paid and collected and what hasn't been, right? So the accrual versus the cash piece, that might become a little bit complicated, but if you need some help with that, let us know. We can walk through that with you, work with you to make sure that we aren't double paying our sales tax or paying not enough sales tax, okay? All right, let's see if we have any other questions here. I hope that answered your question. If not, let me know, please. Okay, I've got somebody here who uses Avatax or Avalara. That's great. They are a third-party app. We have several clients who use them. They work with both QuickBooks Enterprise and QuickBooks Online, and they help automate, especially if you've got multiple state nexus. They can help manage that for you. Take that headache off of your plate if you need to. Okay, how can I clean up my account? I've never used the sales tax module. Okay, that's where we could really help, but generally, we need to tell QuickBooks that this sales tax liability has been paid, so we need to go through that pay sales tax, okay? And then we're gonna have to make offsetting entries because those checks have already cleared our bank, we've already reconciled those. So we go through the pay sales tax module, mark those all as paid with the correct months and dates on them, and then we make offsetting journal entries so that we aren't double paying it, okay? That's how I would do that. If client hasn't used pay sales tax feature, how can you adjust the report? Again, that's going to be going back to make those entries through the pay sales tax module and then creating some offsetting journal entries so that we aren't double paying the sales tax or double reporting that. Lots of good questions today. Okay, I think that's all the questions that I can see. Keep coming back, keep learning about QuickBooks Enterprise. Let us know if we can help you.